Okay. So this one, I can't remember if it was suggested or if we just came up with it. I think we just came up with it.
We heard John Q was going to be used, but that's about it.
And I basically come to the conclusion while I was putting it together. Maybe it would have been interesting if we did John Q with Inside Man, because to kind of have it from both sides, have one aspect where it's Denzel as the hostage taker, and then another where he's the negotiator. It would have been interesting, but I kind of wanted to go from for both of them to have the perspective of the hostage taker. I thought would have made more sense. And this weekend, with also coming off a couple of, well, I guess it's a few weeks now, Money Monster, when all these movies got brought up. So I am actually going to start with John Q. Nick Cassavetes made this movie, director of The Notebook and Alpha Dog, who's also an actor, and son of John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins. Do you know what he's doing? He's a very talented director. Alpha Dog is fantastic. The Notebook is very well done. So he's got a good name on him. And people really like John Q. Like normal people, like average moviegoers, probably you or a lot of people you know, they probably like John Q. And that's good. Because it's the story of this dude that a lot of people can probably relate to. Is pushed to the extremes just because of how much he loves his son. That he is likely going to lose. And because of a bunch of bullshit and a bunch of policies and all that other stuff all of us hate, his son could die. And he's played by Denzel in a really convincing, heartfelt performance. It's very easy to see why a lot of people like John Q. There's a lot of suspense, there's a lot of emotion, there's tears, there's villains to an extent. All the makings of a movie that a lot of people probably like. And that's good. However, I happen to think that while John Q definitely has its heart in the right place, and is a movie that I've seen it a few times, you know, there's something about it that really, really hits in a way, that has made me revisit it. Mainly that core emotion, I think, is really, really, really kind of brings it to what it is. The thing also about John Q, though, is it's really, really fucking silly. Depending on who you are, John Q is either this emotional powerhouse, or it's fucking ridiculous and stupid. It just depends on who you are, and what kind of view you're looking at it as. Start off with, it's also, if you really, really want to, it's also, unfortunately, a very easy movie to make fun of. Which me and my brother did. My brother is a big fan of it. He saw it he saw it in theaters. And he was showing it to me when we got it. And me and him were having some laughs about the opening. How, but we see them and we see how perfect they are. How they're this absolutely perfect family. The only problem is they're kind of financially strapped. And there's things going on at Denzel's job at the factory that's cutting down on his hours. And there's things he can't qualify for that he used to be able to. But they still remain a good family. They're very, very happy with each other. So, that is until they take their kid to his Little League game, where he's running the bases and then collapses and starts twitching. Sorry, it's not funny. And the thing about this, though, is prior to this, we learned that the kid wants to be a bodybuilder. And there are these scenes where the kid is, you know, screaming and doing the, yeah, I'm a great bodybuilder thing, and the flexing and the growling and the yelling, and just, he's always constantly amped. And when he's doing these bodybuilder poses, me and my brother just look to each other and say, it's no fucking wonder this kid has heart problems. And he keeps doing all the way to school once he gets to school. And you know he's going to have a possibly ill-fated problem when we get a character trait where Denzel says, okay, I'm leaving, bye, have a good day. And he's like, not goodbye, I hate goodbye. Say see you later. It's like, oh man, this kid's doomed. Oh, they're going to get real sad on us. And so yeah, we just see them and they're messing around. There's he's talking about how much he loves bodybuilding. Denzel says, and I quote, "You're gonna get a kick out of this." Denzel says, "You're watching too much of that WW wrestling."
WW wrestling?
That's what he said. I don't know.
World Wrestling? All right. Okay.
We'll say worldwide wrestling. How about that?
That actually works.
Okay, that's what Denzel watches.
Worldwide wrestling.
That's what John Q watches anyway.
John Q watches.
And he says, and this is one of those families that is so perfect, that is so agonizingly perfect, that the kid gets told to watch his language at the table because he says kick butt.
Oh,
This is how perfect they are. So you know terrible, terrible, horrible things are going to happen to them.
Oh, yeah.
And so it begins, and I have this little theory. Hear me out. They need to get to the Little League game, and this Little League game is the best thing ever. It's the most important aspect of their lives. Because they're in church, because they're perfect, you see. And while they're in church, the kid starts getting antsy, and he's saying, you know, the game's in 15 minutes. We're going to be late. And so he's like, we need to leave our church early. We don't know if they left church early. It just cuts, and then they're at the field. And I kind of like to think, I wonder if maybe God was offended that they left church early for baseball. So instead of Mike having a heart problem, that was actually God striking him down for leaving church early. It's possible, right?
It's one way to look at it.
But anyway, but everything's fine up to this point because even though they're sickeningly perfect, they're still nice scenes. You know, you don't look at these people and you say, God, I hope bad things happen to them. You want their lives to be nice, even though they're living the life the best as they can in tight situations. And since so many people in the world can relate to that, we want good things to happen to them. It's not funny when the kid gets struck down by God at the baseball field. But then, it's where I made sure that I praised Nick Cassavetes before I started, because I think it's the direction that kind of is the nail in this movie's coffin for the people that don't take to it. Because it's a topic you definitely want to take seriously, and people are more than willing to take seriously. But then you have stuff where the kid collapses and Denzel picks him up and is going to run into the hospital. And when Denzel is running to the truck with this kid in his arms, they're playing this music loudly on the soundtrack that is very similar to, like, the music from an 80s TV thriller. Not even an 80s thriller, an 80s TV thriller. It's really over-the-top music to tell you how dooming the situation is. And it's really not helping how serious what's happening is happening. How seriously what's happening is. So, we get to the hospital, and things continue to not be helped too much by James Woods and Anna Heche, who are our hospital employees who are overseeing this. Anne Heche is kind of like the boss, and James Woods is the surgeon. And the issue here is that they're telling them exactly what's going down and why they at least need a down payment of $75,000 for, like, an operation that's like, what, $250,000 or something. It's a big number that they will never reach. But they can just get the down payment of $75,000. So we see Denzel doing all of his everyman stuff to do everything he can to raise this. And he does this and he does this and he does this and he sells this and he sells that and he goes to these people and he goes to those people, and all the money that he reaches doesn't even come close. Like, just not even remotely close. So he goes there, and they basically, and they're very, very tactful, these people. You can probably tell I am not being serious when I talk about the tact of these hospital employees, which, honestly, I guess depending on where you are, is not that out of the realm of realism. Because some people, regardless of their occupation, can just be fucking dicks. It happens. But these people are... well, with James Woods, the way he basically puts it is, well, what's going to happen is Mike is going to start getting fatigued. And then he's going to fall asleep more frequently. And one of those times he falls asleep, he will not wake up. Okay, James Woods, I know you're played by James Woods, and that's probably how you talk to anybody, but...
You don't say things like that.
That's cool for the grieving parents a little bit. They're basically, Kimberly Elise is the wife. She basically plays it as if he's already dead. Like, she plays the scene as if it was announced to them that he is dead. Like, dead already. Which that's because they're basically told that he is. They're like, yeah, he will not live. That's the line. He will not live long. They're just really... It's like, I want an animation because you're right up in their face, and it's like, he will be dead before this week is over. And none of us are going to care because so many people die here. That's what she says in a nutshell, really. and then there's actually a scene later where it's like, in case you don't realize how shitty these people are, there's James. Obviously, Denzel's over here going, "Oh my god, my son's gonna die. This is terrible. I just literally cannot function of how to handle this happening to my life." And James Woods is over here being buddy-buddy with a dude that's being released, that he just saved. Which is good. He's a surgeon. He just saved a life. He can buddy around with anybody he wants to. But then this nurse comes in, and then the guy in the wheelchair is like, "Am I going to be able to play tennis again?" And they're like, "Oh, you." And then the nurse says, "I like to play tennis." And James Woods turns to her and says, "We don't care. Get back to work." Like, why is this guy like this? Because he's played by James Woods. Now, continuing on with this, he goes to see James Woods and he's like, "Just do me a solid, man. Like, that's all I'm asking. Like, you know, there's this and this and this." And, you know, we say that Mike's problem is so severe that if they raise the money, he's at the top of the donor list. That's how severe his situation is. So that's how close they are. If he can just raise that money, it's done already. But they can't raise the money. So he just goes to Woods and he's like, "You really need to do me a favor because I will never reach this money." And he is so close to it. His little thing is counting down, literally. The whole thing is like, if it goes below 70, he's fucked. And it like goes down a little every day, like in montage form. And so he pulls a gun and he takes hostages of the people that are in the waiting room. And these people... So there are a lot of things that could be changed in this movie to make it something truly spectacular. But there's just so many things in it that are off, you know? There is the abusive boyfriend, Sean Hattasey, I think is his name. You've seen him in plenty of things. Like Alpha Dog, for instance. And he is the racist abuser. His girlfriend's got bruises all over her and a broken arm. And there's like, "Oh, it was a car accident. It was a car accident," right? And he's like extra lovey on her. And then every time he's addressing Denzel or Eddie Griffin, he calls them brother man. Because he's racist. Not helped by the fact that I swear to God there's a line in this movie where Eddie Griffin is hanging back being Eddie Griffin. Especially Eddie Griffin circa 2002. This is the same year as Undercover Brother.
Nice.
So we got Eddie Griffin hanging out back there with his fingers cut off. And he's just kind of hanging out, being a little wisecracker or what have you. And I swear to God, Eddie Griffin actually has the line. They're talking about how hungry they're getting. And Denzel's saying, like, telling Robert Duvall, yeah, we need to get, food in here for the hostages because everybody's hungry. And swear to God, Eddie Griffin's right there in the corner, right on cue to say, yeah, can we get a bucket of fried chicken up in here? It's like, oh my fucking God, did you really just say that, Eddie Griffin? I mean, I know everybody loves fried chicken. That's not the problem. It's just, could anybody else that wasn't Eddie Griffin have said that line? Like, I'm sure even Denzel could have said that line to where it didn't sound like a race thing. But to have Eddie Griffin, of all people, stuck with that line, saddled with that line. Oh, you had to go and do that. That's uncomfortable. And we have more characters that we recognize, like the overzealous news guy with the perfect hair. He's absolutely desperate to get in on the story for John Q because, in quote, this is my white Bronco. I'm going to do everything I can to hack into their stuff. I got my little hacker friend, looks like David Tennant. He's just going to hack into stuff because that's what he can do. And then we have, obviously, our police. We have the Negotiators, Robert Duvall, and we have our chief, who makes a lot of bad decisions, played by Ray Liotta. The guy that doesn't care. He's all about, the TV cameras and all that. It's really funny to me, though, how much we're kind of trying to fit as many gangsters in here as possible, because you got Ray Liotta with the Goodfellas connection, James Woods with the Once Upon a Time in America connection, and Duvall with the Godfather connection. Throw Casino in for Woods, too. I just thought that was a weird coincidence. Or maybe not a coincidence. Yeah, and then the problem, like I said, though, you look at all this ridiculous stuff, the thing that makes, that really raises everything above is Denzel's performance and this character. But at the same time, because he's, like I said, he's really, really, it's a real, like, everything in the movie around it that I've talked about, like the stereotypical characters and the really, ridiculous plot points and the really implausible stuff, and our villainy hospital people, it seems like a very fake movie. But Denzel's character and performance bring such a real quality to everything. Like, he feels like a guy to where you almost feel like you could be desperate enough to put yourself in his situation if it should come to that. And the way he kind of tries to justify everything, but knowing where he likely lies in the future. You just kind of see all this stuff, and Denzel portrays it so incredibly well. But then there's stuff, and there's, some stuff that makes it feel real also, like, the way when he first has to handle the gun, he, like, fumbles with it. So it's like, he's not used to doing this. Because he's just a normal dude. But then you have scenes like the shotgun victim that make you raise questions. Like, we know this guy's a really good dude because of the whole first half of the movie. But when we get this scene when an ambulance pulls into the ER and they have a gunshot victim outside that's going to bleed to death. And John Q basically keeps the doors locked and says, go to another hospital. And then he starts to get, like, I think he's getting paranoid that these guys are, like, a ruse. Like, they're faking that they're paramedics with a body so that they can get inside and arrest him. I don't know. And Kevin Connolly is there, and he basically turns to him and he's like, do you know these guys? And he's like, yeah, these guys work here. I know these guys. And it's like, okay, let them in. It's like, were you gonna let that guy bleed to death while you figured this out? Like, aren't we supposed to be rooting for you, John Q? Isn't this supposed to be about saving lives? Yeah, Mike's heart's got a problem, and oh no, if he doesn't get to the top of the list, he's gonna die. What about the shotgun victim that'll die any second now that you kept outside while you thought this through? It seems like such an out-of-character thing, too, because John Q is supposed to be, like, the ultimate great person. But that's okay. It's alright, I guess. Like I said, though, his performance really, really, like, it's insane how much his performance rises the movie. Because typically, you can have a movie that's ridiculous and then you have a good performance in there and you're like, yeah, that was good, and they raise a little bit, but it's still, but, Denzel's performance is so good, you feel like, even for somebody like me who can see all this stuff, I still feel like I've watched something really good by the time it ends. because of how good he is. Like, the whole movie is basically should just be his performance. But even so, continuing on, the scenes where he's monologuing to James Woods, which there's a couple of those, are really, really good. The scene where he's talking about how he's going to kill himself, and that Mike can just take his heart. It's a really big scene, a really big thing. But the only problem here is that this whole thing about John Q killing himself to give Mike his heart, is a big thing, and they really, really play it up. And they absolutely, really, really make it seem like that John Q will, in fact, kill himself. He's laying on towels, and he puts the gun to his head, and then, oops, he left the safety on, but then he takes the safety out, puts the gun back to his head. All of this while racing, because the opening scene of the movie is a big car accident with this woman. And then circle around an hour later, it turns out that woman is a match to Mike and will be his donor. But the only trouble is that we have to get this information to John Q before he kills himself. And he's already locked away in another room by himself with a gun when this news breaks. Long story short, John Q should have killed himself at the end of this movie. And they cheat. They cheat so horribly. Because, first off, there's no race or suspense. Because it's like, why do the whole subplot of the car accident if it's not going to save Mike's life? There would be no point to all that whatsoever. Maybe the movie would do that, but then what are we all here for? Why would we have seen all of that if it was going to amount to absolutely nothing? Movies are guilty of this and have been. But in this particular case, it would have been particularly... Why? Why even show that? Of course the heart is going to make it to Mike on time. And the way they cheat is horrible. Because he's in there, and he's got his finger on the trigger, and he's practically pulling it when Camille runs up to the door and says, "We got Mike's heart," but the only trouble is that the door she's at is like 3 doors away from where he's at. And it's like, who in time saw her, got the message back to him when his finger was pulling the trigger the last time we saw him? It was cheap. It was a fuck you. It really was. Like, we don't want John Q to die, but that was such a fuck you. But still, like I was saying, though, Denzel's performance is so strong that he still absolutely makes the movie worth watching. Like I said, I've seen, with all this stupid stuff going on, I've seen the movie a few times now. And it's just very, yeah, it's all about Denzel. And are you at all surprised to learn that just a Denzel performance can make an entirely ridiculous movie actually seem good? I don't know. That's up to you. Real quick here, we'll talk about The Negotiator, which is an F. Gary Gray movie. When he was, not many people recognized his name. I think it was he had only done Friday and Set It Off when this came out. This is an interesting take on the hostage taker scenario where Samuel Jackson plays a hostage negotiator who gets framed by his cop friends. We don't know which ones for a while. That's what we're trying to figure out. And while he tries to figure out which cops set him up, he has to take hostages himself. Where he matches wits with this ultimate negotiator, who is Kevin Spacey. Brilliant setup. All from the casting to the plot to everything that's going on here is a brilliant setup. And it's kind of basically, the movie is basically like, it has a very Die Hard feel. Like, it really, like, there's less action, obviously. But it feels very much like a Die Hard movie, really. And it has a good opening scene when we see Jackson's character, Danny Roman, negotiating with this dude who has his daughter hostage. And the scene ends up playing out to where he gets in there and there's a scuffle, and he pulls the shotgun on the dude and has like this crazy look in his eye. And it's like, so we know he's this maverick hostage negotiator, but this scene where he pulls the shotgun shows us that he is, like, warns us ahead of time, he's a guy that can be pushed. Like, it doesn't just kind of come out willy-nilly that he's like, oh, well, in order to prove my innocence, I'm going to take hostages just because. That's what I need to do. Like, he immediately, I mean, regardless of his innocence and, you know, we see his family life and all that, this opening scene with this dude obviously shows that he's somebody that can be pushed to the point that we see him pushed. Which is a good setup. And, shock surprise, Samuel Jackson's really good in this, as he almost always is. There's a really good moment of heavy emotion when they're at, he's being framed for a murder, on top of other things, of his partner, of course. Because, so they're at his funeral, and there's this really great moment of timing when he's there, and he's, like, obviously really emotionally shaken, and he's just, like, you know, he's kind of really holding in his emotions and just kind of trying to just kind of take in everything that's happened, because it's all so sudden and shocking to him. And then it's the moment at funerals like this when they fire off the guns, and when the guns fire off, he jumps, and as he jumps, the tears fall out of his eyes. I always love that moment of timing, and it's such a real, emotional moment for his character. And really, one of those moments where when you see that emotion come from him, you can immediately latch onto him as somebody that you're going to root for, or that needs to get himself out of the situation, because this murder that has him so shaken and heartbroken is the one he's being framed for. So, that's really good. And then we have Spacey, who, obviously, I feel like being my favorite actor ever, I rarely have talked about him.
Yeah, it's
in
weird.
these videos. It's, yeah, obviously he's my favorite actor, so I'm going to be taken to this performance regardless. But this is a really good character for him and in general, and he has a really charming introduction where he's introduced late for being the second headliner here, and where it's a little obvious, but it's still charming. Where it's his wife's pissed off and hiding in the bathroom, and his daughter's on the phone, and she won't hang up, and he's trying simultaneously to get them, and he's saying, like, I talked a dude out of blowing up the Sears Tower, but I can't get my daughter off the phone or my wife out of the bathroom. And it's one of those scenarios. And then he's, it's a little, I don't know, it's a little, I don't know. I don't know if it works completely how they put him in the movie, because how they kind of fit him into the story. Because it's basically, Danny says, "Give me Chris Sabian. I won't talk to anybody except Chris Sabian," who is Spacey. And Spacey is a negotiator so renowned, mainly for the one story we hear apart from the Sears Tower thing that he mentions is that he talked to a hostage taker on the phone, uninterrupted, for 55 hours, and eventually talked him down. He is like the greatest hostage negotiator of all time, is what we're led to believe. Which is all well and good, but at the same time, though, everybody, the big question, the big mystery when he says that, because we've never heard Chris Sabian's name prior to him saying, "Give me Chris Sabian, I'll only talk to him." There's this mystery around why that would be, and you think it's going to be a big deal. And, like, they make it a mystery, like, why him? And, you know, why me? And, you know, all that. Who is that guy? Why him? It's a very brief, unneeded mystery, because it just boils down to he's not on the corrupt police force. That's it. He has no stake in this. That's why. There's no big hidden meaning. They don't have much of a past. He's just not one of the bad guys. That's why. But they made it this real shrouded in mystery thing that was going to be some big reveal. And it's just, nah, he's clean. That's it. That's why. And he's good. And he's really good. That's it. And then we have another main character here is J.T. Walsh. This was his last movie, I think, before his death. Or one of his last. And he's obviously... He's J.T. Walsh, so you know he's likely going to be somebody that's not trustworthy, as he often was. And they do something really interesting with his character, where we're trying to figure out who is, like, the main person that set up Danny and framed him for murder and the funds thing and all that. So it's very, very easy when you're looking at the cast to say, well, clearly J.T. Washington. That is abundantly clear. But then as the movie plays out, it's one of those questions of, is J.T. Walsh a red herring? Or is he maybe not as involved as we think he is? Or is he actually the big concern? And the way he plays the character is actually a really clever juggling of it could go one way or the other. There are cases where it's like, well, clearly it's him, but then there's other cases where we're not quite sure. There's one particular scene that's really good when they're talking about Paul Giamatti is one of the hostages. And he's talking to him about how the signs, how you can tell somebody's lying. And so he's interrogating J.T. Walsh and saying, like, these are the signs. And Paul Giamatti's, like, saying, you know, like, yeah, I saw that sign. I saw that sign. He's definitely lying. But then there's one moment where J.T. Walsh looks straight at Danny and says, you killed your partner. And Giamatti says, I didn't see any of the lying signs there. We might have a problem. And it really kind of throws a wrench in things. You're not quite sure anymore who's guilty or innocent for a little while there. But that's mostly short-lived because this movie, good as it is, has a lot of cliches in it. It's got a lot of cliches in it. And it's one of those cases where the whole movie really is kind of a mystery as to who the big bad villain actually is. And if you've seen any movie in your life ever, you know who it is. Pretty much as soon as somebody's status is established, one of two things. Either they're going to be killed, and we're going to have to avenge them, or they're actually the bad guy. For me, it was pretty obvious. But even so, there's a lot of really good scenes here. There's a good scene involving the guy Farley when he's on the phone with Danny while he's trying to get him to get Sabian. They're trying to kind of hold him off until Sabian gets there. And they're a needlessly put in race the clock thing. Because you're not going to not miss the clock halfway through the movie. But regardless, he basically goes through this thing about telling Farley about how the rule of a negotiator is to never ever say no, because that takes out options, and you can't do that, and people will start being killed. So you pretty much have to dance your way around any question you receive without saying no, or any variation of no. And that's really the different questions he throws at him and how he has to kind of go around that. It's a humorous scene and also a good one. And in the conversation between him and Sabian, I get vibes of the John McClane Al Powell conversations. I think that's kind of where the Die Hard thing's coming in for me. And so the addition of Sabian actually kind of adds some unpredictability, because we're not quite sure how their relationship lies and who's on whose side and stuff like that. There's the great moments when after a while Sabian just starts hanging up on him. And it's like he doesn't care. And it's like you're not quite sure what his plan is, if there is a plan, or where it's going to go. But because Sabian has been known for being so good, you know there's probably something up his sleeve, of course. There's the really great moment where they talk about their different interpretations of the ending of Shane. Where Shane clearly is slumped over dead when he rides away, and no, he's just riding away into the sunset, perfectly fine, he'll be fine. And they bring that back, obviously. As I was saying, though, there's not actually a lot of suspense for this suspense thriller, which is an issue. Because like I said, you're racing the clock halfway through the movie. Sabian will probably get there on time. Like I said, they build up a mystery for Sabian that's not really needed. Another problem is, I say before that Danny pulling the shotgun shows that he can't be pushed over the edge to do something like this. But there's never really any moment in the movie where I legit felt like Danny was going to kill somebody. Ever. So that kind of took away anything where we're constantly waiting to see what Danny's going to do. Like, we would have had to take a whole different direction, but I would love to I wonder what the directions this movie would have gone in if Danny actually did end up killing a hostage on purpose. Like, where would the movie go from that point? But you kind of always know that Danny's not going to kill anybody, and that kind of takes a lot of the suspense away, unfortunately. Another problem also is that it's way overlong. Like, I like the movie, I do, and they have a lot of interesting things they want to do. But the movie's way too long. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. They probably could have done it in an hour 50 and been a lot more. It could have been a bit more taut, and it could have been, cut down, and suspense could have been tighter. But it's still there's still a lot of skill in it. And like I said, F. Gary Gray is a very talented director, as we know. I just don't particularly think this is one of his stronger cases, but a lot of people will disagree with me. So there's that. A lot of people really like this movie, and I'm fine with that. That's good. But there's some problems here and there that keep me from really, really taking to it in a way that I want to. I would say overall, when you just look at their qualities, I think it's pretty clear that The Negotiator is a better movie than John Q, regardless of how well Denzel really, really makes the movie worth watching. But it's pretty clear, regardless of the issues I have with The Negotiator, is the superior movie for sure.
Alright. So it's another edition of Versus. Next week, we actually go into Demon. That is your code name for next week.
One of these faces might look familiar, too.
Yeah, most likely. Continue to watch the content here on the podcast network. We had a lot of great content over the weekend, a lot of Walking Dead stuff since it just got announced for Horror Nights, and the new Sip and Snack. We got Gaming with Ash returning tomorrow. We've got the regular wrestling podcast this week. Raw is on Monday, and Wednesday is moving to Saturday because of the fact that we have a pay-per-view on Wednesday. So, Takeover on Wednesday, Sip and Snack, Random Flavors on Thursday, and a bunch of awesome things. AJ's movie reviews on Friday, and Versus on Sunday. So, a lot of great content coming. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around with the podcast network. Got a lot of really great things coming in 2016. So, that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?
That's it.